Meeting. It is now 6:32, and I'd like to ask Jeremy, would you like to do the invocation?
Absolutely. Everyone please stand and join me in a moment of silence first as we honor the men and women who've given the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty, something that we're proud to do every time before we start our council meetings. Thank you for that. Now in prayer, dear Heavenly Father, thank you for once again an incredible evening in Canyon Lake, Lord. Thank you for all that you continue to provide for us, Lord, and continue to make us want to do better here in our community. And we appreciate you, Lord. We want to keep you in mind in all that we do, and in your name, amen.
Okay, Mark, would you like to lead the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, City Clerk, can we have a roll call?
Councilmember Castillo?
Here.
Councilmember Dane?
Here.
Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Terry?
Here.
Mayor Welty?
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Okay. City Attorney, could you report on a closed session?
Yes, Mayor. Item 1, the City Council gave direction 5-0. Item 2, the City Council gave direction 5-0. Item 3, City Council gave direction 5-0. No reportable action on 4 and 5.
Thank
We will
you.
be returning in the closed session.
Oh, and we will be returning into closed session at the end of today's open session. Any report out of closed session will be done at the beginning of the next meeting.
There we go, there's the microphone. Anyway, it's a good night tonight. We get to have a September Citizen of the Month. That's James Godoy. Good to meet you. Tonight, we recognize the bravery of James Godoy, a resident of Canyon Lake, who took quick action on August 12th when a vegetation fire broke out along 74 near Peach Street in Lake Elsinore. Alongside 2 others, James immediately grabbed a shovel, worked to control the flames until the firefighters arrived. Then he stayed on site to assist with traffic control, ensuring the safety of others until further support was in place. Thanks to James and his fellow community members, the fire was contained, limiting the damage to just 2 acres. James, we'd like to thank you for your courage and your commitment to the community. And it's a small fire is easier to handle than a big fire. And it's pretty dry out there, so you probably stopped something from getting really disastrous. So we want to thank you. Would you like to come on up?
Yay.
1, 2, 3. Oh, I got to get his. Yeah. Would you like to say anything?
I'm kind of shy. You said it good. You said it well.
All right. Anyway, James, I'd like to thank you for what you did. For this, we're going to honor you as the Citizen of the Month. This is in recognition for your compassion, dedication, outstanding service to the Canyon Lake community. Thank you for all you do, and thank you for being there at the right time, at the right place, and being quick, taking quick action.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
So here you go. We'd like to call the council up.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you. We're going to go over here. They actually do a little tape that we have to require to stand on.
Want to come
Is this good? Yes.
right there.
Perfect. Thank you. I can't see it. Yeah, there you go. One more. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
That's great.
Wow.
Okay. Moving on to community reports. We're going to start with Director Darcy Burke, EVMWD.
Thank you, Mayor Welty, council, staff, residents, guests. So there's a couple things I want to cover tonight. First is something that I know is coming. So have you all heard of the Delta smelt most powerful fish in the world because it can stop the biggest pumps in the world. So there are a number of biological opinions that dictate when we can move water from Northern California to Central California and Southern California and when we can't. And one of those opinions is called fall X2, because we're so creative. So it happens in the fall, and X2 is a line in the delta of salinity. So currently, because we had a wet followed by a average year, they are going to move 350,000 acre feet of water, which is about enough water for 1,050,000 families for a year, underneath the Golden Gate Bridge. So what that means next year when it's not a wet year and it's dry, I'm going to have to come back to you and say, we have draconian measures. I'm going to have to ask you to cut back an additional 20%. The state's going to make me put in a fine structure, and we're going to be right back where we were. And there are ways to handle this because there are scientific studies done that say this hasn't helped the fish, that we could save this water for a sunny day. And my point is, if conservation is truly a way of California life, why are we not saving this water right where it is? And that also helps other species, such as salmon, keep the water colder and gives them more opportunity to survive and thrive. So I've asked other people, I'm going to ask the city council. I have made addresses and emails available to let your feelings known about if food and water for people are important, we need to save that water. There are 5 people that make that decision, all appointed. All of you are elected. You have to account and answer back to our residents and our constituents and our customers. These people do not. They have to answer to one person, either the governor or the president of the United States. So you have state and federal. So they have their own agendas, and there's no consequence if they don't do what is the right thing. So that's the first thing I want to talk about. I always have to follow the happy citizen of the month with bad news. So I would encourage you to at least pay attention, because what they're counting on is that we're not paying attention. The other thing I want to talk about is I have been asking for 6 years come December for other ways to explore how we charge for water and wastewater services. Tomorrow they're going to bring a different option for our wastewater charges for a study session or a workshop so we can talk about it. I have to wait and see what the information presented and looking at the packet, I don't know if it's that different than we have. I've been asking for 5 years to validate the way we do it now. Do you hear the crickets? Anybody? Still waiting for that validation study. So what they present to me tomorrow, unless they have data to back it up, I'm having a hard time. But what I do know is water and wastewater service is public health, and you shouldn't have to choose between medicine and groceries and that service. And I know a lot of our families in our region and a lot of our seniors and veterans are in that position, and we need to do something about it. And that's what I'm working on. The final thing I will leave you is I've been talking a lot about capacity fees, which in Canyon Lake you might think really doesn't impact us because it's development. I don't know what your future plans may be, but that does impact in the long run. Or if you have a neighbor that has an empty lot that wants to build, these fees would double almost what it costs to hook up to water and wastewater. I'm not okay with that either. Again, I think we have to fix 2024 problems with new solutions versus 1992 solutions. And I've been advocating for that at Metropolitan, and I've been advocating for that at Elsinore Valley. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people that don't understand water because it's very complex think that we're just going to keep doing the same thing we're doing because it's easier. And for our staff, it's very easy to just add some numbers and make it pass through. So it might get a little contentious at Elsinore Valley over the next few months. I tend not to be quiet. I heard that. But I tend to advocate strongly. But if you have a strong feeling about something, I would invite you to join the mayor and I tomorrow for coffee. That's what we're there for, to have those robust conversations. We don't have to do it on social media. We can, but I'd rather not. And I'm happy to take any questions. Silence.
Go ahead.
The information that you have for addresses and things like that, we just reach out to you for that?
I had put it on my Facebook page, and I put it for my Burke for Water Facebook page. And that's her email addresses, because that's the easiest way to get to them. If you call, you're just going to get to voicemail hell.
So in the sense, you're not only asking the council individually to do this, but also we want to encourage the members of the community to do that
Absolutely.
also. So this isn't coming to the
No, it's
7 of us,
everybody.
saying 7 of you, please do something. It's really
It's everybody.
everybody. You said, does the city need to send anything as the city?
If you wanted to, that would be appreciated, but that would be something I could send to your city manager for consideration if you guys so chose. Because what's going to happen is if the lake drops to a certain level and we would expect to be able to refill it, I can't buy replenishment water. There's other consequences than just no drinking water, right? So we have to think ahead to what their agenda might be.
Yeah, I appreciate you working with the staff to bring something forward. Anyone else?
I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome.
You worked hard.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay. I would like to have Chamber of Commerce, is John here today? John Grande?
That was high.
Chamber of Commerce President, please come on up.
John's so skinny now, he hides behind the pillar.
Have our moments.
I love it.
Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, city staff, everybody else. Before I go through my usual thing, I want to say I'm really, really proud that last month, in the month of August, not only was I the only person in this room, but the only person in our entire community who showed up for the August City Council meeting. But
Literally.
that's right. I was, yeah, literally. I didn't get past the locked doors, but at any rate, did have the rest of the evening to myself. Previous in August, we did a ribbon cutting for a new member and a new business in our community called the Ground Guys. They're a landscape company, and real proud that we're always proud when a new business opens up here, and we're really wishing the best of them and success. Our next business roundtable meeting will be Thursday morning, as in the day after tomorrow, 7:15 a.m. We promised everyone out by 8:30, and that is for chamber members. But if you're not a chamber member, see me, attend as my guest, and that's in the Magnolia Room, which is underneath the patio over at the Country Club. And Battle of the Business is coming up later this month. It's September 29th, Saturday. So if you haven't gotten your team together yet, get your team together. It's going to be a lot of fun. We had a ton of fun last year. We're going to have more fun again this year. Rhea from Sports Stop is going to be providing food and drink. We have a DJ. We have a lot of events. Cheer on your favorite business and your favorite team. And last but not least, I am proud to announce our Business of the Month for September is an organization called Trusted Business Partners. Some of us know Trusted Business Partners. They meet, I think, every other week or something, right here in the Country Club. And they're a great organization for businesses, really, I think, aside from the city and the chamber, or not aside from them, but in addition to the city and the chamber, do a lot to promote businesses here in Canyon Lake. So, any questions?
I believe they meet every Tuesday.
It is. So it's every week they meet. Yeah, I've been to maybe 3 or 4 of their meetings, and they are a terrific group. So.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Sure, absolutely.
John, you had said Saturday the 29th.
That's correct.
The 29th is a Sunday, so is it?
Sunday the 29th. Sorry, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's correct. Any other questions?
Thank you, John.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Appreciate you.
Okay. We have Mike on, yeah, there it is. Jeanette Vanderpool, well, you're coming up and representing Lake Elsinore School Board, right?
Yes.
Yes.
We're great to have you here. I mean, I'll have questions. Go ahead.
Good, good. Well, hello, Mayor, hello, council members, staff, and everybody here. So good to see you. Also, I have an audience with me, our Assistant Superintendent, Jim Jujavitz, who will actually be speaking as a community member lately. But Jim also oversees a lot of our key departments I know people always have questions about. But I did want to share with you just some amazing things that we are doing this school year so that we can all, as a community, make sure that we're sharing these resources with parents and community members and students out there so we can help support them. I know curricular supports is something that I'm always asked about. I see it on Facebook. I get called about it, right? So there's a few key things that we've done. We have our tutoring schedules out. CLMS has their tutoring schedule out, and it's before school, and then also it's done occasionally after school. But if you look on the CLMS web pages, Instagram, Facebook, on my Facebook, I always make sure to send that out. Anybody in the community can reach out to me, but that is all the core subjects, so students can get in-person help. We also re-updated our, our contract with Paper. And Paper is a 100% online tutoring platform. That's 24/7 to any student. It's free. It's over 200 different subject matters. We've had it since last year. Now, I really identified we have an area of growth. We have a lot of students who have parents who work 2 jobs. Maybe they're single moms and they're having to be gone. We have students who maybe they speak English but their parents don't. So getting that extracurricular help and that support with homework isn't always there. Paper is something that we have in place that can help a student at home, or maybe they're going home on the bus, or maybe they're out at practice, they're not at home, but they can log in anywhere and get that support. Now, the tutor is not going to give them the answer. The tutor is going to give them guided instructions so that therefore they can problem solve on their own and then achieve that answer on their own. So we do have in-person tutoring at our schools, but then we also have Paper. If anybody needs help knowing how to sign on to that, I will be more than happy to help them, but also please call your school. We also have Excel, which is funded by the ELOC grant, the Extended Learning Opportunity Program. Every single school district in the state of California did get this grant. The purpose behind this grant is to really get parents back into the workforce. And then also to provide children extracurricular and as well as curricular supports. And that's offered from before school all the way until after school from 6 to 6:30. We were able to expand that to all of our elementary schools and all of our middle schools in the district. Now, there still is a need for after-school care. We live in an area, so Area 2, so that would be Canyon Hills, Tuscany Hills, and the city of Canyon Lake. So that would be the schools CLMS, Canyon Lake Middle School, Tuscany, and Cottonwood. I've had a lot of parents reach out about after-school care. So we are working collectively as a district to see what we can do to extend the opportunity for after-school care. And again, this is free. This is something that is offered free to parents by the grant. We all know there's only so much that you can do with grant money. And so we're looking at other ways with partners to be able to extend that opportunity. Physical safety, something very near and dear to my heart. As all of you know, I'm a mom also. I have kids at all of these schools. And if you go to Tuscany and you go to Cottonwood right now, you're going to see the security vegetables that are actually built now. So not just anybody can just walk through those doors and walk right back to a classroom. They will be stopped. And then also what's working out great is our new sign-in procedures where they have to come in with their ID, scan it through the system. Little safety stuff goes on, they get a badge printed out, and then we are able to escort them to their class. So there's a lot of beautiful things happening. Also in transportation, which you see happening on social media all the time. There are currently only 5 open positions now. So our transportation department has been great at recruiting, heavily training those individuals. The amount of training that goes into a bus driver is extensive as it should be. My own kids take the bus. And so there's only 5 current positions, so that is wonderful, which will mean a lot as far as getting our kids to school on time, picked up, and all of that. So again, I appreciate your support. Remember, LAUSD does cover 144 square miles, and we cover everything from South Corona to Wildomar to the city of Canyon Lake and Lake Elsinore. And one final thought, we did start a new Connecting Family series. This goes out on Parent Square. We push it out on social media, and that is truly a way to engage families with their children to make sure that we are keeping our families first and connecting them and so they know each other and what's happening in each other's lives. Any questions?
I have a question. Could you tell me about your concurrent/dual enrollment programs with the junior colleges? Do you have that available, I believe?
Yes, with all of our high schools, actually. And we have an MOU with Cal State San Marcos as well, and then we're working on further MOUs as well. But you can do concurrent enrollment with any high school, which there's dual enrollment and there's concurrent enrollment. So a high schooler, any grade level really, can be enrolled at MSJC, and they can take classes whenever they like in whatever matter it is that's going to be pertaining to their future career, and that would be concurrent and then also dual enrollment. But then they can also speak to the counselor at their high school and get them connected with the counselor at the university or the college, and help them get enrolled and take those classes. We have a lot of students who actually have graduated with an AA. So,
That's always amazing, when I knew about this program, but I thought, you always think, oh, it's just a little thing on the side. And then you go to these award ceremonies and they go up and they say, yeah, this person intends to graduate with their AA
Yeah.
at the same time they're going to high school. So I think it's just a totally impressive program. And the paper, from my experience, the paperwork's a little edgy getting through and getting enrolled, so we really need a hand-on process to get that done.
yeah.
But I think the outcomes are amazing for the right kids.
Absolutely, and it's also about getting them to be aware that they can do that and how to support them, whether it's through financial aid, and then also having their high school counselor really handhold them, because they're children and they need assistance. Most of us went to college, and we know how hard that can be, and they need to have those people that have experienced that to help them get through. But also our career and technical education programs are phenomenal in our high schools as well. Each high school has unique CTE programs, and at the end of those 3 years, the student actually graduates with a certification in that area. So we have welding, we have engineering, we have health and wellness, we have sports medicine, we have sports management, we have auto shop, we have an array of things at each and every high school that we also encourage our students to be part of as well. That can also help give them a little bit of a leg up when they do apply for universities.
So can I go back to high school and do some of these programs?
No, there's laws. You can't.
Sounds
You
great.
can volunteer though. We would love to have you.
In regards to the tutor programs that you discussed at the beginning of your presentation, do you guys have measures in place to actually measure the participation on behalf of the students?
Yes, so that's actually something that us as boards and also our executive cabinet is aware of as well. We're a very fiscally conservative school board and school district. This is why we didn't do any layoffs. There weren't any pink slips within our district. We're financially solvent. We're making sure that when we do have things like ELOP and grant money and whatnot, that those are all one-time expenditures. We're making sure that we're not going to be putting something in place that we can make sure it's going to be there for a long time. One of the things that I've asked for paper, for instance, so that is, we have a very low amount of students that are utilizing it, and that's why I'm here. It is a need. All studies show that high-intensity tutoring has a positive outcome on student engagement, and their increase in test scores, which aren't a only thing out there, but increase in grades, right? And also helps improve their self-esteem and everything. Now, what we have, and because I also see this in all the districts that I support in my real life, but you typically see the high-achieving students utilizing these resources. I want the students who need it to be utilizing these resources. So it's working with our teachers union to make sure that the teachers are aware, because they also can utilize it during the class day as well. It's almost like having another support person. So we are monitoring that. We want to see ways that we can help increase the usage of that. And if it doesn't, absolutely, I will advocate for still maybe just another modality of a different one that maybe that's connected to summative informative assessments and the student is automatically paired to a tutor. But we're doing everything we can to get these kids to use it.
That's good.
Yeah.
I just wanted to compliment the school district on the security measures. I have personally had to sign in and get the badge, and all that was wonderful as a parent to go through that. It was not an inconvenience, and even if it was totally worth it. So
was
I'm
quick.
grateful. Yep. It was quick, it was easy, and I felt good about it. So thank you for that. Also, I wanted to compliment the busing. I know I've seen some Facebook posts about late buses, and that's working out the kinks at the beginning of the school year, but my son was able to get his bus pass and has had no issues going to middle school, so I'm grateful.
Well, thank you.
Because I rely on the bus very much.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, time to move on to public safety updates. Code enforcement, Ruby Manzano, come on up.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, and staff. My report's going to be covering the month of August. We had 1 unpermitted building construction, 5 MPDS violations, 1 solid waste in the town center. BLM, we gave out 2 verbal warnings. We had 3 separate massive piles of illegal dumping, which have since been cleaned up and hauled away. We had 1 AVA, 2 unpermitted signs under a zoning violation, 2 administrative nuisances, 2 weed abatement notices were issued, and 0 short-term rentals were found. We are, however, monitoring about 9 of them currently. And when I say monitoring, it means that they're still up, but they're not allowed to book, if that makes sense. Under our residential rental registration, we currently have 353 registered properties, 339 renewals, 19 pending renewals, 5 new unregistered properties were found, all have registered since, 6 inspections conducted, 22 self-certifications completed. Under business license, we have 7 new commercial businesses registered, 9 new home occupations, 13 new out-of-city, and 5 renewals. And that is all I have.
Any questions?
Just want to say thank you, you and your team. I know we had some issues in the town center with a couple businesses that will remain nameless, and I just want to say professional, and it's always good to get those calls, and just good job on the hard work. So I know I have this conversation all the time, and I wanted to see if we've had any internal talks, maybe with our CM, on ways to work with the POA to increase our residential rental program, because I still think there's about 300 outstanding properties, and I know it's something that we've talked about. I think it could be beneficial to help. I know that a lot of the landlords that I work with in the community are very grateful for the program and how it is, especially when it comes to the renewal process. I think you and your team do a great job of providing the right information so that things are given to them adequately, but I do believe we have quite a few homes that are not part of this program that are creating fire hazards, and I know you guys are looking day in and day out. I have yet to hear, and maybe I'm just not getting the calls, maybe my colleagues are, but I have yet to hear a negative complaint from any of the landlords that I work with, and when it comes to working with the city. So kudos to you and the team on making this program not only successful, but also a program that I believe our landlords aren't scared of. So I just want to say thank you, because I know that takes a lot of work to do that.
Thank you.
You're dealing with very sensitive matters when you're dealing with tenants
Definitely.
and landlords, so awesome job.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Everyone else good? Okay, thank you, Ruby. Okay, Riverside County Sheriff, Captain Rails.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council Member, City Staff, Captain Jim Rails. I do not have anything public safety related to update for Canyon Lake, which is a good thing because there was no major incidents to report on. I will have your third quarter stats at the next meeting, which will cover all the way through October, and I will provide those to you. What I wanted to do is take a few minutes here just to kind of give a plug for Prop 36, since it is that season right now. And what Prop 36 is, it's on the ballot specific just to California. And if you remember 10 years ago, Prop 47 was voted in by the residents of California. And what that did is it tied our hands, law enforcement's hands, as far as related to theft. It changed the threshold on it, changed it over 950. It tied our hands with a lot of the drug charges going from felonies to misdemeanors. And what Prop 36 does is it's going to roll back some of that. It's not going to fix everything all at once. It took 10 years to get to where we are now, related to homelessness and all these theft crews that are going around all over California shutting down stores because they can't keep up with all the theft that's going on. And that's a lot of the reason why our prices are so high also. But what this will do is it'll roll it back if this gets approved. Prop 36, what it does is 950, it's still the same, it's the same threshold. But what it allows us to do as law enforcement, if we have a suspect that does 3 consecutive thefts or even 4, we can add all those together to the 950 and make it a felony. So it's no longer one theft, because what a lot of theft crews do is they go out, steal $400 worth of stuff, we arrest them, it's a slap on the wrist, they get a citation, same as if you're speeding. They get a citation, they're released then and there, and then they don't do any time at all. This will make it a felony. It also makes it that if you have 2 consecutive prior convictions of theft, any type of theft, the third one becomes a felony, which gives us even more And that'll more help with the smaller thefts. A lot of the homeless that are out there constantly going in and thieving all day long at different locations. It's still not going to add up to that 950, but I guarantee you most of them are going to have convictions on their record, and that's going to make us take them in for a felony, and then they're going to have to get some help. And then on the drug side, what it does is possession of narcotics, which is fentanyl, cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, all those class 1 drugs. Possession of that will now be a wobbler, which every wobbler, and wobbler means it can be a felony or a misdemeanor, but we charge the felony, and then it's up to the DA to decide which way it goes. But what that does is it puts them into drug diversion. It gives them court-appointed help with getting off the drugs, and it also gives them some help psychologically. So those are court-appointed, which is going to be good. We're still getting them some help. So and that'll allow us to get some of these people off the streets that are chronic and actually get them some help. So there's a few more things to it, but those are some of the basics. But if you don't believe me, please do your research. Look at it. It sounds like this year it's going to be a yes vote for a yes.
Yep.
It's not like going to be before with Prop 47 where a yes vote
Means
meant a no and a no meant a yes.
Yeah.
So hopefully they're not going to trick us. It hasn't came out yet, but we'll
Right.
see the ballot. But take a look at that.
Mr. Mayor, if I
Please.
may. The only criticism I have is that on our July 31st meeting, we did pass proposition in favor of this Prop 36, and I wish you were
Awesome.
here to lead it.
I apologize.
Because it would have been so much better than our city attorney giving us the information from Google. You would have been way more insightful on this proposition. Chad Bianchi, I'm sorry. So thank you, Captain. We're fully on board. This council was one of the first cities to pass a resolution in favor of Prop 36.
Awesome.
We're proud to do it, and so it was no-brainer
Oh.
over here.
One addition to that, what this is going to do also, if someone is arrested for sales
Fentanyl.
of drugs,
Yeah.
fentanyl
Yep.
specifically, they're going to be put on notice, and they have to sign something saying that we understand that if you deal drugs again, somebody dies, we're coming after you
Yeah.
because you're the one that sold it to them.
Yeah.
And you know it's illegal and this could happen. So that's another thing that's on there.
It's
which
been
is
huge, yeah.
So.
Awesome. Appreciate you, Captain, seriously.
All right. So next month, I will give some stat updates. Did we do the second quarter stats during that meeting that I sent over? No. That was not done? So what I'll do is I'll do second and third together stats, and I'll just do one presentation for all
Perfect.
6 months at the next
Perfect.
meeting. So I'll send that over.
Awesome.
Thanks, Cap.
Well, good,
Thanks,
thank
Captain,
you.
appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay, Canyon Lake Fire Department, Chief Latenders, please come on up.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, City Staff, Jeff Latenders, your Fire Chief, and I'm here to present the Fire Department statistics for the month of July, actually. So with the holiday just coming back today, we weren't able to get September stats for you. We'll get those done this month, get them released to everybody, and then we'll get back on track for you. So during the month of July, the Fire Department had its busiest month this year, second busiest since we've been in operations since January 1st, 2022, when we ran 116 calls for service. Of those 116 calls, there were 6 fire responses, there were 88 medical responses, 4 service calls, 15 good intent, 3 false alarms, for the total of 116. Of the fire calls, we first had a structure fire on July 2nd in the 2,900 block of Strawberry Lane. It was a dryer fire with some lint in it. It was quickly extinguished by our personnel. On July 4th, we had a vehicle fire at Windward and Kenyon Lake Drive North. A truck in the driveway was totally destroyed from fire. We weren't able to determine the cause of that fire, but it did appear to be suspicious in nature as it started in the bed of the truck. On July 9th, and that's what this picture is, there was we had a grass fire at White Wake and Canyon Lake Drive North. It was actually just some illegal burning of weeds that spread to a fence. And then on July 19th, this is the fire that we have the picture of there at River and Toker in Meadowbrook. It was a tire fire that spread to the vegetation. In all, there was a large response by Riverside County Fire, and our unit was the first on scene to assist in that firefight. On July 23rd, we had a structure fire in the 27,300 block of Jarvis Lane in Meadowbrook. That fire was out upon our arrival, And then on July 27th, we had a vegetation fire at Highway 74 in Lawson Canyon in Meadowbrook. It was a small grass fire, and I think we recognized the individual that stopped and assisted on that fire earlier this evening. So those were our fire responses. Our incidents by time of day, this is the trend that we typically do see, is during the morning and early afternoon, our call volume is lower, and then in the early evening hours, we tend to spike, where we had a high spike at 7 p.m. with 17 responses during the month of July. Where do those fires occur? Well, where do those incidents occur? Most of those incidents occurs in single-family dwelling, but we have not been without a month this year where we've had a response at the fire station, either someone bringing someone to the fire station or coming up and reporting a call. And again, we just want to be advocates. We're not always there. Please call 911. The closest resource will get to you as quickly as possible. And where those incidents occurs inside the lake, again, it's pretty much a spattering throughout the community. I think we saw a lot more on the east side of the community this month than we typically do. The side over off of Longhorn is less busy than the remainder of the community. It was one of our better months for our response time, so our average turnout time for the month of July was 59 seconds. Our average travel time for the month was 4 minutes and 56 seconds for a total response time of 5 minutes and 42 seconds. So very good for that. It was actually our lowest as we look at our 90% fractile. 90% of the time, this is what we're meeting. Our turnout time was 1 minute, 1 second. Our travel time was 7 minutes, 44 seconds for a total response time of 8 minutes and 16 seconds. Automatic aid and mutual aid given during the month of July, we responded 17 times outside the city into Riverside County's jurisdiction. As you can see, there were 3 calls in Lake Elsinore, 9 in the Meadowbrook area, 4 in Good Hope, and 1 in Menifee. And those are based off a zip code. When we kind of scroll into it and really look at where those calls are this is the total automatic and mutual aid responses we have responded to for the year, and that total is 78. Riverside County CAL FIRE, on the other hand, responded 4 times into Canyon Lake during the month of July, and thus far this year, they've responded for a total of 53 incidents. I'm pushing the wrong button, so I apologize for that. This is a detailed map showing the 53 responses Riverside County has come in to assist us with. Again, the bright red are areas where they come in on multiple occasions, and we could see along Railroad Canyon Road, and that corridor is the most prominent area that we need assistance at. Our training hours for the month, we had 360 hours during the month of July for a total of 1,811 hours thus far this year. The month in July, we focused on the Engineer Orientation Academy, pumping and hydraulics, engineer equipment orientation, and then area familiarization. We also did our annual paramedic updates that's required by the healthcare agency. We trained on rapid intervention crew. We simulated wildland fire, as it is that time of the year, rope rescue, and then the reserves focused on self-contained breathing apparatus and personal protective equipment. The Canyon Lake firefighters were at a lot of events during the month of July. 4th of July, obviously, was a big one. We were at almost every Taco Tuesday. We tried to make as many of the movie nights in the park and at the pool. We had a neighbor come back and say thank you, and it was actually, she was celebrating her first birthday since she was critically injured in an accident, and came back to the fire station, brought us a cake, and just wanted to say thank you to the firefighters. So that was kind of special. And then just our typical interaction with the community on a day-to-day basis. 4th of July, we kind of talked about that briefly last time I was here, but we did staff up an additional paramedic company and a chief officer. We had 7 incidents inside the city. There were no fireworks-related calls. We also coordinated the fireworks show on behalf of the fire department. We handled all the incidents inside the city without any outside assistance, and we did respond to 1 incident on July 4th outside of the city. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions if you have any.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So if my math is right, this month, Canyon Lake assisted outside of our gates 13 times more, or 13 times more than we had assists in, and 25 times total for the year. That makes me very proud to be a good neighbor to all the surrounding cities, because when we started this fire department, there were concerns that we would not be a good neighbor, and I feel very happy about that. And I wanted to recognize you all for doing that.
I think we are doing our best to obviously give assistance when we can. Some people might say, well, if you look at those numbers, is it equitable? And I say without question, it's equitable. Those are incident responses. On one incident, if it's a structure fire, we could get 2 or 3 engines and a ladder truck from Riverside County Fire. So on one incident, there could be 4 units that come in and assist. So while the overall number is higher of us going out, when we need them, they will be there, and we are grateful for that.
That makes me very happy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
Chief, are you getting the numbers and results for Menifee? Are you getting their breakdown?
We do have where the calls are, yes, we do have that.
Are
And
you seeing the reverse effect in regards to the Quail Valley Station, in regards to them coming in more than we're going out to them?
Those numbers are over both Menifee, Lake Elsinore, Wildemar, Meadowbrook, and the unincorporated area. So I haven't really looked at it city by city. I think we all are well aware that they are in the process of moving their Quail Valley Fire Station, Station 5, from physical Quail Valley to right off of Getz Road. The backyard of the fire station will be Canyon Lake.
Right.
And we think that will have an impact on the call volume in the future.
Right.
And again, we want to maintain that relationship so that we can use that relationship to our advantage as well.
Absolutely. I just say, you've done a phenomenal job. To what Councilwoman Casey Castillo said, I was at a town hall with Karen Spiegel last week, and a council member from Lake Elsinore came up to me and said, hey, once again, you guys popped into our city more than we've popped into yours, and I hope that we can reciprocate that and at least look at it for Menifee, because they're having some serious conversations with that new station and the type of responses that they're getting, having to go into Paris, the unincorporated areas, and also their city. So that's coming your way, Chief. You're probably going to hear that if you haven't already, but they are having pretty in-depth conversations with their with CAL FIRE right now on what those numbers look like, and we are part of that conversation.
And again, if you, I put it on my computer here, but if we look at the map where the calls occur, we do have the ability to show what community we're going into. And so we can definitely break it down if asked to into the city of Menifee, into the city Lake Elsinore proper, and into the unincorporated areas.
Absolutely. Awesome work. Appreciate you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, we're going into our public comment period. Do we have any public comments on non-agenda items?
Mayor, we have one speaker tonight, Jim Ujevich.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Wetling, Mayor Pro Tem Terry. My name is Jim Ujevich, and yes, my day job is as Assistant Superintendent for Facilities and Operations for the Lake Elsinore Unified School District. But this evening, I'm coming before you as Jim the Citizen. I live in the city of Lake Elsinore. I've been a resident in Lake Elsinore for almost 25 years now, and an employee of the school district just about that long as well. But I'm coming tonight to give you information on Measure T. And I am part of the Measure T, Yes on T for Top-Notch Schools Committee, which has formed to advocate for the passage of the bond. The bond is a facilities-only bond that would bring a $198 million bond to the school district for facilities. This would cost each of the typical homeowner in our district, and remember our district stretches for 45 square miles at a population of about 120,000 total for the school district. That would be about $28 per $100,000 of assessed value on homes. Now that's assessed value, not market value. Those are two different measures. It's on assessed value. And for the typical homeowner, that would cost about $104 per year. So about $104 per year for the typical homeowner. A big bond like this has to have some purpose to it, and I'd like to share some of those with the council tonight. We need a lot of things in the school district as far as facilities. We've identified $850 million worth of need in our district for our sites and our support sites. But we've broken down the bond into 4 main categories. Repairs, there's still a lot of repairs that need to go on. You can imagine with the number of 25 schools that we have, each of those schools has multiple wings and classrooms. Repairs add up a lot, and there's some things that we have to put off until we have the proper funding for it. Safety and security is another very large bucket for this, along with the vestibules and the online camera system that we have now at all the schools, and our visitor management. Our next feature that we'd like to bring forward is automatic door locking systems at all of our sites. So this is the type of system whereby pushing one button, either on a web-enabled app for those who we give ability to do that, including law enforcement when we need to. We could lock down all the exterior schools on any of our schools. Right now, that only occurs at one school, Albert Hill Elementary School, as that is our newest elementary school. We have a lot of facilities improvements we'd like to make, including playgrounds and bringing structures back up to safety guidelines, adding shade structures. The state has recently come back on the requirements for shade structures, so we're able to do that more often now. Plus, new classroom spaces. And new classroom spaces, again, are always going to be a need. We see the development going around in the valley here. And for the citizens of Canyon Lake, that would be important because our next school property that we have that we'd like to develop is Wasson Canyon, and that would be the closest school to the city, just outside the North Gate. So thank you for your time this evening. Appreciate it.
Any questions?
Unfortunately, we can't do that.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any comments on consent agenda items?
Mayor, we do not.
Would any of the council members like to pull any of the consent agenda items?
Mr. Mayor, are we going to do comment and council member reports first? or do
Oh,
we
I'm
wanna go
sorry,
right
I
into the
jumped my
consent
gun
calendar?
there.
Because I'll pull an item just for fun.
I've got that next on my public comment. Okay, I'll move that back then, and then we'll go to council member comments. Jeremy, would you
Since I
like?
open my big mouth, I go first.
Absolutely.
I'll be quick. RCTC, we were dark, not much to report there. RTA, this is maybe something that this council will find interesting. We're starting to look at autonomous buses. So in Riverside, they're going to do a test pilot program where a couple routes have been approved, and it's state-of-the-art for what we call not just municipality, but government entities starting to utilize this technology. So we partnered with the city of Riverside and the agency to see if this thing's going to go or not. It's very fascinating because although it's considered autonomous, there is still an operator for safety purposes, as you can imagine with public transportation and whatnot, and securing that riders are getting on properly and not. This program exists in New York for an airport right now, and it's working pretty well. It goes up to 25 miles an hour. Kind of freaky when you look at the video and watch this thing operate, but this technology, as most of us have seen, whether it's through Uber or any other types of transportation, you're starting to seeing vehicles now that don't have drivers. So we're going to get the first of its kind here in our county. Happens to be in the city of Riverside, so that'll be very interesting to see. So the other thing is we're planning on going to DC this month. We went to DC 2 years ago with our lobbyists, and we actually secured $8.4 million on that trip. We got some good partners there that like RTA, and that's been very helpful. And this time, as a request for myself and the chair of RCTC, Lloyd White, in the city of Beaumont, we're actually going to partner up and go with the two agencies together. So it's going to be the first time that it's ever happened where we had both RCTC and RTA going up and down DC lobbying for some cash. So could be an interesting
Good
trip.
luck.
I'll report back. Thank you.
Okay. Casey, would you like to be next?
Sure. We had a great meeting of the Community Engagement Ad Hoc Committee. So much good in our city that is coming. I'll let Jen talk about Veterans Day, because we have plans for that, but something that we're super excited about is 9/11. There's going to be 9/11 at the fire station, and I believe that those details will be posted on our social media and website. So if the community could come out to that, that would be great. I know that our firefighters would love the support. We're having a pumpkin bash in October. The pumpkin bash is going to have live music and vendors, and we're hoping to work with our farmers market to have a night farmers market and a pumpkin patch, and it's going to be awesome. And I've seen some people say, oh, well, I can't drive my golf cart over there. We are making sure that we include our businesses that have been suffering loss of business for, whatever reason, and maybe also because of the golf cart. So we would just encourage people, don't boycott our pumpkin bash because you can't drive your golf cart. Please come to our pumpkin bash and support your local businesses. Thank you.
Jen.
Okay. Thank you. I was very proud to represent Canyon Lake in our Supervisor Karen Spiegel's second annual Senior Legacy Awards presentation that was last week, and our very own Steve Liebring was the recipient of this award, and it was a really nice presentation. It's like I said, the second time that they've done it, and it's a really great presentation for seniors within Riverside County, within Supervisor Spiegel's district. And adding on to the Community Engagement Committee, we also have Veterans Day coming up. We're going to be doing our Veterans Day celebration at Holiday Harbor again, like we've done for it's our third year? Third year. And still have the great flyover, but we'll have more vendors and recognition for veterans, so everybody please come out to that, and that will be on Veterans Day. That's all I got.
I'm good this month.
Okay, this month I attended the International Conference of Etymology, and I learned about mosquitoes, and I learned about flies, and I learned about a whole bunch of things, and what kind of insects carry diseases, and what kind of insects actually pollinate our plants. So it was very interesting. The war with the mosquitoes is never ending. We find ways to kill 80% of them, and then 20% of them live, and then they grow, and they become a whole bunch from that little 20%, and it's an ongoing, constant struggle to keep the pesticides online, the genetic treatments online, the sterilization programs online. It's pretty amazing. And probably the best thing I learned the whole time I was there is just how good the staff is at Northwest Vector Control. I mean, if I asked them a question or if I wanted to comment, they were right on it, and man, they're some smart guys in there, so it was very impressive. In the next month, the Leisure Board is going to come out and talk to us in the community. I'll get the date and time out. We'll get it out through the city, but they're going to talk about the alum treatments coming up in the fall. The spring alum treatment had a little bit of a hiccup. We had some fish die. They looked and they studied, and they really couldn't determine exactly what happened. Fish dies in lakes are somewhat normal. This one happened to occur during the alum treatment, so they were concerned, and they tested the water, they tested the fish, but as far as it goes now, they couldn't determine what caused it. But as fish kills happen often, and they've happened often historically here, they'll come forward, the Leisure will come out and talk about the next one so we all can be aware. The bottom line is the lakes are wild. They're kind of like wild animals. There's never a guarantee that a lake's going to be perfectly safe. And so we go out and we test, and the POA tests, EVMWD tests, and then we keep our eyes out for anything that changes. But sometimes it's, even though you can go in the water, maybe it's not the best time to go in the water. But we'll talk more about that at the next alum treatment. We were excited to go to the ribbon cutting. That was upstairs. We're looking to do some work up above and the floor above us. One of my best things I think is going to happen in the future is these two posts are going to go away upstairs, and we'll actually Who are you? Oh, John. There you are. John will no longer be sitting behind a post, which is exciting. The other thing is in the long run, we have the separate building up above, the half the staff's up there, half the staff's here. They'll be moving down hopefully in the long run. So we really feel like we'll have one central home and not be fragmented in little pods. And so we're excited about that. And that's about it for me.
Mr. Mayor, just real quick, I have to share this thought, and Councilwoman Casey Castillo, you're going to know exactly the memory that I'm dealing with. When Jordan Aaroncrans sat in that seat, he would sit there with his little white piece of paper, and he would have the entire month bug, whatever it was, and he would read the whole thing, and he knew he was killing the audience. He literally said it. I know this is tough information, but he said, I don't know what to do with this, but I got to report it out. And so don't ever feel like you're going to bore us away by reporting the bug of the month, Dale, with whatever's coming our way, because I do miss that from our good friend, Mr. Aaroncrans, who's rest his soul. So, but thank you for the report.
That was the one fight I got into with Aaron, and he talked about the mosquitoes here, and I say, Aaron, you got to go to Minnesota. Minnesota kills California. There's really no standard. And he looked at me like, no, California's got the bugs. So that we'll move on. And do we have any public comments on the consent agenda?
Mayor, we do not.
Any council members want to pull a consent agenda item?
Mr. City Manager, if I would poll item 4, who would be discussing and talking about it?
That will be our Administrative Services Director, Mike Borja.
Mike, are you prepared to speak on this contract? Yay, I'm going to pull it.
Okay. Any other items want to be pulled? Okay, at this time, let's go ahead and move and vote on, can I have a motion to vote on 1, 2, 3, and 5?
I'll make the motion.
A second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Roll call.
We'll do a roll call vote.
Roll call vote.
Councilmember Castillo? Aye. Councilmember Dane?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Terry?
Aye.
Mayor Welty?
Okay, now that we've cleared the air for Mike to come up and do a talk, here you come.
Did you get that aye vote? Okay. Hey, Mike.
Yes, sir.
So question for you. VCA, we've been with them now 3 years?
I think it's 3 years, yes.
Did they, during negotiation year 1 to 2, 2 to 3, was there ever an option as far as 3, 4 year would reduce price, or do they do longevity contracts?
It's something we didn't really pursue to ask, only because at the time, they were the first ones we kind of went to.
Right.
For the services when we were putting the department together.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I would assume that maybe that could be something they could do, but I don't know for sure.
I mean, they've been a good partner. I mean, there's been no issues, at least from what we heard. Would you agree?
Yeah, they're taking care of everything that needs to be taken care of as far as those additional reviews that our inspector can't do.
Right, exactly. So if we could, maybe, if the CM wants to bridge that gap, in the future, I think the reason why I bring it up is because I do believe they've been a good partner with us, and maybe they would be willing to do a long-term, contract for price points. But, it's going to be more your world than mine, but, just a thought.
What we had talked about was doing this amendment and then looking at an RFP at the end of the year, just to verify that these prices are competitive.
Yeah.
And see what's out there. This was to kind of get us through with many of the things we've got going, push this out a year, and we'll look at it, especially with the methodology behind the new procurement ordinance that came in around May, April?
Yeah. And, this gives me, having this item on the agenda allows me to talk about our building department, and, I think it's been pretty incredible, the hard work that I know that, Mike, you've helped out with too, in securing and making sure that department's running thoroughly. And I know from, one of the council members up here who gets most of the calls in regards to building permit issues, it's been nice to have a good team and the hard work that they're doing. So I know it's not
Extremely
easy.
busy.
I know, you guys are
They're
cranking.
really
I don't think we ever would have thought it when we started it 3 years ago.
Yeah.
That we were going to have this much volume in our own little building department.
Yeah, and our deputy building official seems to be handling everything pretty well.
Yeah.
Every now and then we get a little hiccup, but for the most part, it gets resolved.
That's the fun thing about Canyon Lake being so small, is we all hear about the complaints. So, anyways.
It's also nice to have in-house.
Amen.
Well, that's made all the difference too,
The least
because,
amount of outside contractors.
Don't even get me started with
The
just the
better.
financial component
well, if
of
you
it.
remember, we're only open for 4 hours each day.
Yeah.
You know, with our contractors, just because of their costs. So now that we're open all day, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Makes a huge difference because you, you can have it handled in Canyon Lake as opposed to driving to wherever they are or waiting around for the days that they're here. It's a major difference.
Yeah, it's been good.
Service is much better.
So, sorry, so see, I didn't scare you, Mike. I'll make the motion unless there's any other comments on the item.
I'll second.
No other comments? Roll call vote?
Councilmember Castillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Dane?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
For clarification, business item number 4?
This is
consent
item
calendar?
number 4.
Perfect. Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Terry?
Aye.
Mayor Welty?
Aye.
Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Consent item number 4,
Yes, indeed.
not business.
We have no public hearings today. Moving on to business item 6, update regarding the police service assessments. And City Manager Brown, you ready?
Yes, we have a presentation by Matthew Rodriguez, but also, as part of this process, we'd like to get closure on the project that his company was hired for. So at the conclusion of this, if we could get a vote and direction on closure of this project so that we could pay them out, that would be appreciated.
Hello, good evening, Honorable Mayor Welty. and
Mr.
City
Rodriguez,
Council.
welcome. Appreciate
Thank
you.
Thank you for having me again. First of all, I want to publicly sort of acknowledge your staff. Cheryl Garcia was amazing in helping us with this project. Aaron Brown did a fantastic job getting us materials that we needed from the Sheriff's Department. Of course, City Attorney Graham, thank you for your help. And Chief Latendrez, thank you for having us into the fire station. It was really nice to be able to see your initiative that you guys took on, you know, in the last couple of years, really be fruitful and successful for you, and he was very accommodating in having us behind the doors there in the fire department. So I'm Matthew Rodriguez, and I'm representing GPS Consulting, which stands for Government and Private Sector Consulting. I'm here with my colleague, you guys remember John Sullivan? He's here, John. I think together, the two of us have about 65 years of law enforcement and security expertise and experience, and John, in his case, he's a global international terrorist and terrorist expert, and he's, you know, not a terrorist, but terrorist expert, and he's actually been published, you know, probably hundreds of times in periodicals and books, so he's pretty easy to find on Amazon and everywhere else. So John will be here in case I need to tap him for some information. But, so part of the this police services assessment we did it in different phases. We took a look at the current contract, which I think I have a thing here. Are you handling that, or am I handling this? Me? Okay, yeah, thank you. So the first thing we did is we did an analysis of the current contract with the Riverside Sheriff's Office. And as you know, you've had a long-standing quality relationship with the Riverside Sheriff's Office, and you know, we respect what they do. Okay, we did that for a long time as well. So we'll take a look at that contract. Secondly, we looked at the workload of the Riverside Sheriff's Office, which included their calls for service, you know, Part 1, Part 2 crimes they have to deal with, arrests, investigations. And then the last part of the presentation, we did a comparative analysis to demographics, like cities in terms of budget. Those cities were specifically Bear Valley Police Department, and the reason we looked at them is because they're behind the gates, similar to Canyon Lake. We also looked at the Lancaster Police Department, which currently is brand-new hybrid police department working closely with the Sheriff's Department in Los Angeles County. That's sort of a partnership that's been going on in a new initiative. And we looked at the McFarland Police Department up north as well. And the reason we looked at them is because they have a similar statute in their books which doesn't allow their public safety personnel to work through the CalPERS system. So we also went over to Menifee and spoke with Menifee just to get a feel for the pulse of law enforcement locally in the region. So again, starting with the contract assessment, the current contract that you have with the Sheriff's Department, it started in 2021 and it ends in 2026. The annual cost of that it started at 2.5 million, a little bit more, and incrementally rises to 2.729 million by the 5th year. That annual increase is about 1.8% a year or 9% over the life of the contract. And those contract totals do not include add-ons, which might be, they're dictated by law enforcement needs, which may be overtime, unforeseen overtime, or special events. I'll define the calls for service that the sheriff's deputies have to deal with. The calls for service, they either come received by deputies through the dispatch center, or there's self-initiated activity with observations from the field. Calls from dispatch can either originate from a call from the general public or a call initiated by the station itself. And the self-initiated activity can encompass a variety of activities by the deputies, such as citizen contacts, traffic stops, patrol checks, etc.
So a call for service can be a deputy cruising up to a park, exiting his vehicle, assessing the situation. That would be considered under their definition of a call for service, a call for service.
Yes, it could be even a patrol check.
Okay.
So taking a look, let's say after hours at your community center, logging a patrol check as a call for service.
Got it. So just because I think that's where some of the discrepancy comes in with some of the questions that I receive from community members. Call for service doesn't mean a 911 call coming in through dispatch, a Canyon Lake resident calling 911 for emergency help. It could be the example that you just gave.
Yes, you'll see later in the presentation, in the totals of workload and volume, it will be a combined call for service, either initiated through the dispatch center or self-initiated from the deputies in the field.
Thank you.
So next I'll get into the actual level of crime. I think your slogan is a bit of paradise. Yes, you do
Piece of
have a bit.
paradise.
You do have a bit of paradise
Yep.
here. I took a really close look at your crimes, and well, I'll first give you the definition of Part 1 and Part 2 crimes. They're uniform crime reporting statistics that are actually compiled by the FBI, and law enforcement is required to submit them annually to the FBI, and they are published as Part 1 and Part 2 crimes. Part 1 crimes, also known as index crimes, are more violent or, more egregious crimes. They can be violent and/or property crimes, and those include aggravated assault, forcible rape, murder, and robbery, and they're violent crimes, while also arson, burglary, larceny, theft, motor vehicle theft, they're also classified as property crimes. Part 2 crimes are more quality of life crimes sometimes, or lower level misdemeanor types, and that's simple assault, curfew offenses, loitering, embezzlement, forgery, counterfeiting, disorderly conduct, driving under the influence, drug offenses, fraud, gambling, liquor offenses, offenses against the family, prostitution, public drunkenness, runaways, sex offenses, stolen property, vandalism, vagrancy, and some weapons violations. So when you take a look at Canyon Lake, we'll start with the year 2021. Canyon Lake, actually 2021, 22, and 23, they had under 300 Part 1 crimes, which is, to me, dictates that the city of Canyon Lake is a safe place to live. But again, I qualify that by saying that one crime is too many crimes, so we can always do better. And there's strategies that we'll be able to present maybe in the future on how to assist in that. Tonight, we're specifically asked for the portion of the study to present the statistics as we saw them. It's presented through the city manager's office by the sheriff's department. So in 2021, there were 283 reported crimes in Canyon Lake. 137 of them were more serious, Part 1 crimes, and 146 were Part 2 crimes. The Part 1 crimes, and this is a kind of an interesting thing, and I remember talking to city council about this in closed session. There were 49 assaults in the city of Canyon Lake in 2021, 7 burglaries, 54 larceny thefts, 21 motor vehicle thefts, 2 rape by force, 1 robbery, and 3 outside agency stolen vehicles. When I take a look at the 49 assaults, it seems like it's a very high number for a small city like this. I don't know what it means. To me, it could mean, and I'd have to see the police report specifically to see if there's patterns, but it appears on the surface to be either alcohol-related events or people just being incivility to their neighbor, or perhaps taking matters into their own hands and administering street justice. I'm not sure what it is, but 49 assaults in a small community like this in 1 year seems like a lot. Again, burglaries, thefts, pretty common. These are property crimes, motor vehicle theft. It's very popular and common in most communities, but again, low the city of Canyon Lake. Part 2 crimes reported, 37, all other offenses, 7 all other sex offenses, 1 disorderly conduct, 21 driving under the influence, 9 drunkenness, 1 embezzlement, 12 forgery and counterfeit, 8 fraud, 16 offenses against the family and children, 5 runaways, 17 sales or manufacturing of opium or cocaine derivatives, 2 stolen property, buying, receiving, 22 vandalism, and 5 weapons violations. Again, in 2021, 22, and 23, the numbers you'll see are between the number 200, but they're always under 300. 2022, you see similar, we went from 283 in 2021 to 227, so there was a fairly significant decrease in crime in 2022. Total of those were 120 Part 1 crimes, 107 Part 2 crimes. Specifically, again, 41 assaults, which seems to lead the pack, 11 burglaries, 43 larceny thefts, 21 motor vehicle thefts, 1 rape by force, 1 robbery, and 2 outside agency stolen vehicles. Part 2, 25 all other offenses, 1 other sex offense, 3 disorderly conduct, 12 driving under the influence, 8 drunkenness, 9 forgery and counterfeiting, 11 fraud, 1 offense against the family child, 4 runaways, and sales and manufacturing of opium or cocaine derivatives, 24 vandalism, and 1 weapons violation. I'm going to go over 2023, and then I remember we wanted to sort of be able to open it for dialogue, so I'll stop there. In 2023, we had 227 let me turn that here, or 250 reported crimes in Canyon Lake. 137 of them were Part 1 crimes, 113 Part 2 crimes. Part 1 crimes were 3 arson, 45 assaults, 7 burglary, 42 larceny theft, 25 motor vehicle thefts, 5 stolen vehicles from outside agencies. Part 2 crimes were 17 all other offenses, 6 all other sex offenses, 3 disorderly conduct, 14 driving under the influence, 6 drunkenness, 8 forgery and counterfeiting, 13 fraud, 3 offenses against the family or child, 8 runaways, 5 sales and manufacturing of opium or cocaine derivatives, 28 vandalism, and 2 weapons violations. So
Matt?
before I go into anything else, I want to open that up. Yes, sir.
I have a question. Do the assaults include domestic violence, or is that categorized under offenses against the family?
That would be different. A domestic violence would be different.
Okay, so that's under the Part 2 crimes?
If it was felony domestic violence, it would be under Part 1 crime. Yes.
Okay, so some of the assaults could be
I'd
family
I'd have to see the reports to know
Okay.
exactly what it is, but I don't know how many are specifically domestic. I don't normally see domestic violence classified as assaults.
Okay,
So an assault could be a fight between the neighbors.
right.
Right.
Something like that. So I'd have to see the classification of the exact report. I can't really specifically say how much domestic violence is occurring in the city. It just seems like a high number of assaults to me overall.
Yeah, it does seem,
I didn't get the specific reports. I'd have to
Understood.
drill down on them and do like a little bit of data mining to be able to answer that question more specifically, but I
Okay.
think the sheriff's department probably could tell you that.
okay, thank you.
Well, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
They seem fairly consistent over the years. There's some little rises and some little falls, but overall, every year kind of feels like the same level and type of crime. Is that-
Yes, I think it's pretty consistent when you look at the numbers. Again, it's like 227 to less than 300. Comparatively speaking to most cities in California, you guys have a very nice place that you live. Again, there's always room for improvement. I think a great, take a look and maybe work with the sheriff's department on a crime prevention program that involves community-oriented policing, see something, say something, neighborhood watch. We talked about all that in the report. We're not going to get too deep into that today, but that's the sort of stuff that's needed. Again, neighborhood watch, business watch, see something, say something, volunteerism, and that all gets into the community-oriented policing program that may or may not currently be taking place here.
When you, and I know you've spoken to several chiefs, not just for this little project that you're helping us with, but for other things that you've done too. Your resume is very impressive. In looking at our stats, considering, like the mayor said, pretty consistent with one another, do most chiefs, in your experience, look at that data and say, all right, we have a common denominator here. For the last 3 or 4 years, we've now had the same amount of crimes reported. How do we reduce that? Is that kind of how they look at these stats too, when they're looking at year over year and, all right, what's the benchmark? How do we improve? Because what we're seeing presented this evening is a lot of the same numbers year after year and not a big swing of difference. If we saw a 199 or if we saw a, even a 210 and then we saw like a 350, we would be able to paint the picture on why these numbers are different from year over year. But for us, it's kind of just been consistent.
Yes.
No improving, no increase, kind of just the same.
Yes, to answer your question, yes, you can actually drill down on the data, and that's something that John introduced me to about 10 years ago. We were colleagues in the LA County Sheriff's Department. He introduced me to a concept called intelligence-led policing, where we actually would get a crime analyst to work it was kind of in the early phases of this stuff, to do data mining. So we took a look at all of the reports, and you look for commonalities. When did they happen? Where did they happen? Why are they happening? Who did them? Where did it, all this stuff, and you could then start to draw patterns.
Right.
And that's, we used to call it ILP, intelligence-led policing, and then we would create priorities based on that information, and each week, we would have meetings and determine, all right, we appear to be, let's just use the assaults, for instance.
Right.
A public service campaign, think before you drink, right, or think while you drink, if it is in fact alcohol-related, or if it's domestic violence related, like Councilmember Castillo was thinking, or maybe it is, then public service education, right, and crime prevention, and working with the DA on trying to figure out why these people are, assaulting their husband or wife, and it's all education. But you can do that data mining and drill down for crime prevention purposes.
Right.
All right, we'll go into the calls for service. So the Sheriff's Department in 2022, they reported 227 reported crimes in Canyon Lake. Now, where am I at here? I'm sorry. Calls for service, sorry. Okay, we started 2022. In the last quarter of 2022, deputies averaged 352 dispatch radio calls and self-initiated combined activity per month. Again, Councilmember Smith, that's both the calls for service and self-initiated activity.
Got it.
The breakdown in September was 303, October 334, November 356, and December 418. Now, we got 4 years for 20.
Quick question.
Yes,
sorry.
ma'am.
Is there a way, I'm guessing that we don't have the information on how many, if you back up to the previous slide, how many were self-initiated and how many were calls in?
No, they were not separated.
Do you have that information on how many times 911 was called? It's probably ahead, or is it not there?
I don't believe that the information we received were, okay, there we go. When we go, I got a sampling.
Okay.
When it came into, here's what happened. There was so much, the information was voluminous that I asked, and they were very gracious in providing a sampling. In 1 year, I randomly picked one day out of each year, out of each month of that particular year. I'll get into that in a minute.
Okay.
And that will break down the difference between self-initiated activity or calls for service.
Got it.
So that was really kind of necessary because there's so much data and so many days each month that it was very important for us to do that.
Just so I don't forget this question, do you believe that it was easy to obtain that information?
Well, you'd have to ask city manager that because I received it.
Mr. City Manager, would you agree or disagree that it was easy to obtain the information on how many times we call 911 a day here in Canyon Lake?
Easy is relative. It was easy for me to receive it, but it was something we had to ask RSO for Captain Rails was instrumental in going back a couple of times to get what we needed. He clearly fought on our behalf to get us this data, but it was not a, hey, can we get the data, and it was sent over. I hate to speak on his behalf, but I think he probably made more than one trip to get this data that we needed.
Yeah, because I know that Councilwoman Casey Castillo and myself have been asking for that type of data now, and it's good to know that we at least get to see it, so that's helpful. And thank you, Captain Rose, for helping us with this project.
So again, the information was provided in its totality. The one thing that we weren't able to get, because it's not provided by the Riverside Sheriff's Office, is a daily deputy worksheet to see which deputy does what each day. That's unavailable. And a watch commander's summary, which is like a summary of each shift.
Right.
And/or a 24-hour period. Those were not available either. They just, what I'm told, they don't provide those to the public. So in
Wait, I'm sorry, but we're not like the public, right? I mean, we're a client, aren't we?
We are, Captain Rails will have to answer that question, but it was, my understanding at the time was not that it wasn't available, that they just did not have them. So we'd have to get clarification on that.
Okay, thank you.
So in 2023, the Riverside Sheriff's Office, they averaged 388 dispatch radio calls and self-initiated combined activity per month. So it's broken down month, year, and day. There were 4,663 dispatch radio calls and self-initiated combined activity during the entire year. And on a daily basis, approximately 13 dispatch radio calls and self-initiated combined activity per day. You can see to the right, there's a typo breakdown, but overall activity, January 333, February 296, March was 364, April 337, May 483, June 486, July 500, August 399, September 413, October 364, November 323, and December there were 356.
Pretty typical.
It's pretty,
right? Pretty busy during the summer, and then we tend to taper off.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common in law enforcement.
Yep.
Is there any way to take that overall number and match that up, or to compare that to the crime committed in that month? In other words, if you were to take a look at the entire year based off of the part ones and part twos that you provided, is there a way to, I don't know what hopefully I'm asking this correctly, is there a way to take a look at both of those numbers and kind of figure out, well, for this type of volume, these types of arrests, it would most likely be dispatch calls in order to, do you get what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
No.
Is there a way to take the overall number, then take a look at the overall crime? And you take a look at the overall crime and you can kind of, you know.
What he's asking is, if you weren't given the amount of calls for service versus self-initiated, could you look at what crimes were being committed and kind of figure out, this isn't something you happened upon because you were checking the park. This is a domestic violence or a report of a theft or something, not just someone happened upon it.
I think what you're asking is how many of these incidents were created by self-initiated activity?
Correct.
That would be...
Compared to dispatched.
Yes, that would be another request on probably arrests, I would think, to see whether or not the arrest was generated from self-initiated activity or a call for service. I didn't have that data.
Got it.
Because that would be interesting to know. I would suspect that the deputy that is cruising around Canyon Lake probably doesn't happen upon crime so much, because I think people probably avoid that person.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
I mean, just a hunch, but I don't think that's probably happening too often.
Good question.
So I had 3 months for 2024. The first quarter, they averaged 360 dispatch radio calls, self-initiated combined activity per month. The overall breakdown was January 360, February 313, March 408. So again, like Councilmember Smith, they're all pretty consistent. The level of activity is very similar throughout the year. But again, law enforcement gets busy in the summer, sometimes slows down a little bit, maybe gets busy at Christmas. This is probably the most telling page of it all, and that was a sampling. And again, I have to thank the Sheriff's Department for providing this information. It was some legwork for them. So what I did was just, again, pull out of a hat and said, okay, I'm going to take a look at what exactly did these deputies do one day out of each month for this particular year. So a random sample of 10 shifts throughout the year was requested by the researchers to determine the level of activity in any given 24-hour period. So we can go back to July 1st of 2023. You had 8 calls for service and 19 self-initiated activities. So I think that's what you were asking, Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, is it 8 calls, meaning 8 individuals called 911, and then on top of those 8 calls, that deputy went to an additional 19 calls for service, so we're looking at a total number of 27? Or is it 19 total?
No, so it's not necessarily 911. There are business calls.
Okay.
Very few of them are probably 911. They're regular business calls, could go on the regular business line, 911 being emergencies. But in this case, 8 calls for service generated through the dispatch center, 19 self-initiated activity for a total of 27.
Thank you.
August 15th, there were 5 calls for service and 6 self-initiated activity. September 12th of 23, 14 calls for service and 4 self-initiated activity. October 24th of 2023, 7 calls for service and 1 self-initiated activity. November 16th was 5 calls for service, 3 self-initiated activity. December 8th, 7 calls for service, 25 self-initiated activity. January 12th of this year, 2024, 9 calls for service and 5 self-initiated activity. February 17th, 3 calls for service and 3 self-initiated activity. March 30th, 0 calls for service and 4 self-initiated activity. April 12th, 7 calls for service and 4 self-initiated activity. And as a reminder, this was in a 24-hour period, and these were actually chosen randomly by me.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So, self-initiated activity could be contact with a citizen or drive-through,
Traffic stop.
or drive through the roadway in,
Mhm.
could be
Yes.
self-initiated activity, or follow the school bus, or, I don't
Yes.
know. Okay.
Follow the school bus, stop by council member, see how things are going, check the park, check the community center, assisted the crossing guards, traffic control, monitored golf carts, whatever it might be.
So besides the most glaring information, which is the minimum uses of service that we actually utilize here in the community, what patterns are you seeing here, if any, through your random sampling?
Based on this year is a pretty low volume of workload.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest. One day there was 0 calls for service and 4 self-initiated activity. Now that looks like it's a bit of an anomaly.
Right.
But I think it sort of speaks for itself, right? 8 calls, 5 calls, 14 calls, 7 calls, 5 calls, 7 calls, 9 calls, 3 calls for service in a 24-hour period. I think most people would say that's not a super busy day.
Yeah.
However, that's good in one way,
great
because it
for
means
us.
you have a good
So-
city and you're safe.
I have another question about that then. So if
Yes.
this is a 24-hour period.
Yes.
This is not a shift.
No.
This is a day.
This
Well,
is
it
a full
depends.
day.
If they have 8-hour shifts, it's 3 shifts. If it's 12-hour shifts, it's 2 shifts.
Gotcha. Okay.
But the good news, again, is that you're not going from shooting to shooting to shooting.
Yeah.
So that's the good news, is that
That
you
is
do have
great
a,
news.
Beyond safe community.
you have a
good,
very safe
awesome.
community and a lot to be proud of. It's beautiful. I've been behind the gates 3 times now at least, and I think it's something that you all should be very proud of.
Matt, were you shocked to see the numbers as low as they are?
No, I think you just have a great community. I didn't know about your community. I'm born and raised in LA County and raised my family in Orange County. So it's not like I heard about Canyon Lake every day in the news, right? There was a
Right.
heinous crime after heinous crime. It's just, you have a lot to be proud of here.
Yeah.
It's a great community and a longstanding relationship with the Riverside Sheriff's Office, that something that you have now, and I'm sure you'll have for many years to come in one way, shape, or form. So there's the sampling. Again, I think that's just a really good snapshot of what's going on in the city of Canyon Lake.
I think, Matt, I wish that in this moment especially that we had a room full of folks and we had the thousands of comments that we get on social media receiving this data for the first time like we are, because if you would talk to most of the residents, they would think that we're a lawless community and crazy things going on the streets and all these things are happening. But when you look at the stats of what's actually going on, we do live in an incredibly safe community.
You do, but it's very important, you understand the perception of safety.
Yep.
Is what's really important. And
What's
that's
there?
part of the community-oriented policing strategy, is to get out and share with your community and your neighbors what's really going on.
Right.
This is information that everybody should be championing and sharing and telling people that you're safe and it's low levels, low incidence of crime. It shouldn't just be anecdotal people on next door, freaking out because they heard a firework, right? There should be communication that this is real. This is what we have going on in our public safety arena.
Right.
And that's pretty easily accomplished through community-oriented policing, neighborhood watch, and I think we've discussed that before about what that can look like. Okay, segueing into arrests. In 2021, there were 43 felony arrests in Canyon Lake, of which 17 were outstanding warrants, which means they had already existed as arrests and they were in the system for somebody who did not show up to court. Riverside Sheriff's made 119 misdemeanor arrests, 58 which were outstanding warrants. In 2022, there were 36 arrests, which 17 were outstanding warrants. RSO made 51 misdemeanor arrests, in which 9 were outstanding warrants. And in 2023, there were 26 felony arrests, which 4 were outstanding warrants. RSO made 30 misdemeanor arrests, in which 2 were outstanding warrants. The investigative side of things, and this is what happens when there's a crime committed, a report taken, and it's handed over to a detective for follow-up. Between July of 2021 and the first quarter of 2024, there were 73 cases related to Canyon Lake assigned to investigators. Of those, 67 were closed. That meant that the case was either solved, the victim was non-desirous of prosecution, or there was no further workable information available to solve that particular case. And that concludes the statistics, the data portion as it relates to crime, arrests, calls for service. That is, the Riverside Sheriff's Office has to deal with. Again, there was other portions of this study, the comparative analysis, which are take a look at other agencies that are similar in size, similar cities, similar budgets, and then some options for you in a public safety realm going forward. But today we were asked to specifically focus on the crime statistics and the data that was presented to you this evening. I believe that we were asked to come back in October for a different presentation, and I think John Sullivan will be leading that presentation going forward.
I do have a question.
Yes.
Could you go back to the arrests? Sorry. Did you receive any data as to whether or not those arrests were Canyon Lake arrests on the outstanding warrants? Because my understanding is that the outstanding warrants are basically just getting rearrested, right? So, but do we have any information if these are people who are getting rearrested for Canyon Lake offenses, or are they just people who happened to be in Canyon Lake and got rearrested? Does that make sense?
I didn't get that data specifically, but I could probably speak to that and say those are people that are in the system from anywhere.
Okay, so they're not necessarily Canyon Lake warrants.
I can guarantee they're not.
Okay.
That would be, some guy comes in here from San Bernardino or Riverside, they come
Okay.
across him, they run him, he's got an outstanding warrant. It doesn't, the borders don't stop at the gate.
Okay, so, I mean, that answers a lot of questions. So when you look at the 2021 data and it says 58 outstanding warrants, that's not necessarily 58 crimes from Canyon Lake.
That was 58 of the 119 misdemeanor arrests were suspects that failed to show up to court, whatever court that might be. And then for felonies, 17 of the 43, for whatever court they didn't show up to.
So if there's a person who happens to be a guest at the Roadway Inn because they're in Canyon Lake, but they have a Riverside warrant, we're getting that stat, even though the crime that they were originally arrested on may not have even been anywhere near Canyon Lake.
Yes, but that's not a bad stat to have.
Right.
It's not like a Part 1 or Part 2 crime. That's a stat that a bad guy was taken off the street.
Okay. So that even kind of tells maybe more information that the people who are getting arrested here may not actually be committing crimes here.
That crime already occurred.
Right.
Yes.
Maybe somewhere else. Most
It
likely
did,
somewhere else.
Most likely somewhere else,
Okay.
or here, but.
Or here, but-
It could be a local guy that lives here and the cops know him, and
Gotcha.
they're looking for him, because sometimes the detectives will share that information with patrol deputies and say, hey, keep a eye out for John Doe, and then, grab him when you see him.
Or a traffic stop as they're driving on Railroad Canyon through our city and they have a warrant.
Yes, you could have a carload, right, and maybe one person in that car has a warrant, and they go
Okay.
to jail.
Gotcha.
City Manager Brown?
Yeah, so if I could comment on October, Matt and I had discussed all of this data in depth and the entire scope of what his project was, and I really feel like with everything that's here, everything that's presented, it could elicit a response from one or all five of you going, I want more. So this finishes out his project, but what he did say was he and the good doctor here would be willing to come back in October if you want more to talk about what other options are, what is going on out in other agencies. They did say they would come back for that, so that's where the October item came from.
And I think it's important that we did actually take a look at policing strategies in these other agencies, whether that be the use of drone technology across the board, closed-circuit television system, reserves, explorer programs, volunteers on patrol, all of the gamut. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we can come back and present if you so desire.
I would ask that happen because I would be interested to see, you mentioned some other agencies and that are similar to us. Additionally, you had mentioned community-oriented policing, and I feel like we could use that in Canyon Lake. So I would like to see maybe some information on that.
What I would ask is that council, when this is complete, would still vote to close out the project so I can get them paid, but I already have him on the hook. He is committed to coming back in October, so that would be fine.
We'll be here for sure. Yeah, we really enjoyed working with all of you and your staff and the fire chief. It's just been a really good experience for us. We've enjoyed it. You have a great city, a lot to be proud of, and I'm proud to know you, so thank you.
Any final questions?
Do you need a motion?
I would.
I'll second Casey's motion.
I
Oh,
have
sorry, you got a
question
question?
first.
Perfect.
Not to be Debbie Downer here, but coming back, I definitely would like to hear more. And I kind of, I didn't realize that it was just going to be just the statistics. So I do want recommendations. I would like to know other information, but I would be negligent in my finance committee hat. Then are we approving more money for additional studies?
I'm happy to tell you that I already had that discussion, and they would be considering it part of the project, coming back with smiles on to give us that without additional dollars.
Perfect, I second.
I have one last comment, and that I think a lot of our crimes in the city probably are repetitive. We have special Canyon Lake crimes. I know historically we have people decided that because they're behind the gate, they don't need to lock their cars. And you hear that a lot, and it makes the cars much easier to steal. I suspect we have a lot of drinking in our beaches, so some of that salting might be the beach battle, so to speak. But I think a public outreach plan would probably be pretty effective to at least turn some of that down. In other words, please lock your cars and work together with the signs and the people around.
If you're working closely with the POA, those civilian security that you have in there, they see a car unlocked, you just leave a note on it, hey, you left your car unlocked, you should be a little bit more vigilant.
Yeah.
Can I ask another question before I do the motion? Going back to your very first slide on the contract for so it's a 5-year contract, 2.5 million going up to 2.7 million, 1.8% increase each year, 9% over the life of the contract. And our crimes, our Part 1 crimes look really consistent, right? And you're saying how demonstrably safe, comparatively speaking, we are. I want to kind of bring you back to this does not include add-ons. So what does that mean?
Well, if there's an incident that requires overtime, maybe the way I read it was other deputies coming in, let's say from Elsinore or other places to come in and assist Canyon Lake, then there's an overtime cost that is burdened by the city for that. There may be special events, such as your massive 4th of July and other stuff that.
If I may, Matt, I believe the numbers that you have are the total spend. What you were talking about is the potential add-ons. Say we did have SWAT come in, a large operation that went on. The numbers he have, 2.5 is a total spend for that year. So it wouldn't be, we're roughly somewhere in that 1.9 to 2 on the flat contract, plus all the add-ons, events, that kind of stuff. So I think there's a little confusion there, and that it's that amount plus potential add-ons that didn't happen, because that was a total spend at that time.
Yeah. I'm sorry, that was a physical reaction to a lot of money.
Before we move ahead to the motions, do we have any public comment?
Mayor, we do not.
Okay, back to the motions.
And Mayor, if I could clarify, the motion would be to accept the project from GPS Consulting as complete and authorize the remaining balance to be paid.
And come back.
I've already got him on the hook for that.
And include that.
City Clerk, we have a solid
So we have a motion.
Okay, let's
We have
go.
a first by Councilmember Castillo.
And the second?
Mine got
second.
eliminated by Councilwoman Jennifer Dane.
I just want to make sure that we do have on the record, though, that it is including coming back.
We will put that in the minutes, so it's official.
Thank you.
Now that we have a first and second, can we get a roll call vote?
Councilmember Castillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Dane?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Terry?
Aye.
Mayor Welty?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And for Councilmember Dane's sake, as they say, this is not my first rodeo. That check will be cut. I will be holding on to it, and I'll make sure you get it when you're here on the October meeting.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Good job, Matt.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
Appreciate
Thank
you
you
both.
very much.
Have a good night. Drive safe.
Moving on to item 7, update regarding the city's weed abatement program. I've gotten a few emails on this. This is maybe part of what's driving this, but it is fire season, and we're going to need to pay attention. Chief Latendrance, it's your
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, City Staff, Jeff Latendrance, and I'm here tonight with Ruby Manzano, our Code Enforcement Supervisor, and we're going to give kind of an overview of not just weed abatement, but defensible space, fuel modification. They're terms that are used interchangeably. They are similar, but they're still different. So we want to kind of talk about what the process is and what we've done so far, and show you some pictures of some of the changes that we have been successful in. So when we think about weed abatement first, weed abatement is the removal of plants, annual grasses, and other vegetation on vacant lots that pose a fire hazard to occupied or vacant structures. Weed abatement is something that is done on vacant buildable lots for the most part, not necessarily on our large lots of a 1/4 acre or 5 acres and so forth. Defensible space, and you hear that term a lot when you may be speaking with an insurance company or something like that. The magic number you hear is the goal is 100 feet. We have our minions there, we've cleared our 100 feet. Have you cleared yours? But one thing to know about defensible space and the responsibility on the homeowner is a homeowner can only legally modify or abate hazards on their property. They have no legal right or legal ability to go off property onto someone else's property and remove those fuels. So it is a limitation on what a homeowner can do because it has to be done on their property. Fuel modification it's managed landscape that you see in new large development, residential developments, where you see a green belt that's possibly built on a hillside. They've modified the fuel. They possibly have some sections that are irrigated. They plant vegetation that's fire resistant, that's not high in oils that would more likely burn, and they're managed and maintained typically by a HOA or a POA. Currently, to my knowledge, we have no identified fuel modification zones in Canyon Lake. When we talk about weed abatement, there's a process that the POA does on an annual basis. And they have their personnel, their staff go out and look at the vacant buildable lots in the community, identify those lots that have to have the weeds abated, and have them removed. This year, Ruby and I met with the POA back in March. We talked about their process. The city actually passed a weed abatement ordinance back in December of last year, and that gave us the authority to go in there and to intervene. But after meeting with the POA's process is very solid. They go out there, they send out their notifications, and they have a mechanism in place that if a lot is not abated, after a couple contacts with the property owner, they have the authority to go out there and abate those lots. And on the right side, there are the different sections of our POA CC&Rs that identify the responsibilities of a homeowner and gives the POA the authority to go and abate those processes. So it's our understanding that the POA completed this work. And I think as you drive around town, you'll see that at least internally on the lots, amongst the residential dwellings, that this has been abated. They start back in March. We've already seen some of the growth start to come back. If needed, we can go back as a fire department, or the POA can go back as an association or as the homeowners association and mandate a second clearing if we have rains, if the growth builds. And the way the rules are, it calls out 12 inches in height that it has to be abated again. So this part, the weed abatement on the lots, in our mind, was completed this year. What Ruby and I did back in about April of this year is we drove the entire community, and we identified certain areas in the community that not necessarily were buildable lots, but that needed some additional attention for the property owner to maintain. On several occasions, that property owner is the POA. And so this one was actually a complaint-driven modification. We had a homeowner that lived near the tee box of the 17th green. And as this property owner looked down into the drainage below her home, you could see on the left-hand side that the palm trees had never been trimmed, that there was a lot of built-up vegetation down there, and she was just flat-out scared. And so one of our code enforcement officers, Marlon Johnson, worked with the POA and very successfully was able to get this area mitigated. We've changed the environment down there. We've made it much more where the dead fuels have been removed, and the homeowner was very pleased with the work that the city was able to accomplish working with the POA at great cost to get this area cleaned up. Another area that we work with the POA on is kind of just opposite, a little bit down of Jump Lagoon, is an area with more palm fronds. And what we have here is kind of open space. It's what we call the intermix, where the fuels in the homes are intermixing with each other. And at what point do we intervene and modify the fuels to try to make it safe when they're out in the open? And so in this area here, we work with the POA to go in there and clean some of the The vegetation that was around there, the dead vegetation, we're still working with them to trim up the palm frond. The problem with palm fronds is when they burn, it creates an ember cloud. And so that, even though it's some distance away from homes, can still create a fire hazard for us. Another area that we worked with is in the area of Sparkle and Loch Lomond by the storage yard. If you know, behind there, there's about 60-some acres of land that are adjacent to our community. And so we worked with the property owner, and it's a private property owner there, to go in there and mitigate along the property line. We're not looking for them to mitigate the entire parcel. We're looking for them to create that defensible space of about 100 feet out from the residential structures. And again, very successful in getting this one completed. Another area across from Railroad Canyon, outside the main gate, but still in the community, is off of Sorrel Road. And we have some very large parcels up there, and they need, even though it's just one home at a time, it's their one parcel. This is where the weed abatement aspect comes into play on an individual lot that is occupied with the structure. And so we still want them to have defensible space for their home. So again, successfully gone around these homes and created that defensible space. And it's an art to do this. We don't want to go in there and just have a tractor and graze everything. We actually want to keep the root structure in place to maintain the stability of the ground when the rains come. So we basically want to go in there with weed whackers and try to get it, but we want to keep the root structure in place as we're modifying the fuel. Another area that we spent a lot of time on this year is the Fairway Estates. And we think of that as a mobile home park, but that mobile home park, again, is intermixed. And there's a lot of open space and vegetation behind it. So again, our code enforcement officer, Marlon Johnson, we went out there, we drove the areas, we identified the parcels, notices were set to the individual property owners, and we worked with them to really clean up the area in the Fairway Estates. Another area, just like Sorrel, is off of Black Horse. We went in there with the larger homes, the larger lots, and had those areas cleaned and created that defensible space. And then along Wood Duck, at the end of Wood Duck, again, near the storage facility, this area is actually owned by EVMWD. And so we've worked with EVMWD, got them to go out there with their crews. They actually just finished this last week and got this area cleared and created that 100-foot buffer on those homes behind Wood Duck. And as I think everyone knows, we have some BLM land in the area, and the BLM land borders Appaloosa, Longhorn, and then Vacation Drive. And so earlier this summer, we had the BLM out there in force, and we got everything along Appaloosa and Longhorn done. Then we got into the middle of summer, we got into fire season. The crews had to leave to go out on fire season, and they just came back last week, and now they're working along Vacation Drive. So this area is not yet completed. Longhorn, as I mentioned, in Appaloosa has been completed, and those areas have been modified to 100 feet thanks to the work of the BLM land. Last year, we did work with the BLM, and we got them to work in the drainage that comes out along the pump track, Vacation Park. And if you've been to the Vacation Park and you've seen that drainage, especially as it gets close to Vacation Drive, it's a pretty thick forest in there. And there are houses right on the other side of that. And so we have identified future projects, that being one of them, and I'll show that next, but also this area here along Railroad Canyon Road, abutting up to the condo complex and the hotel, the Roadway Inn. It's pretty thick in there, and it comes right next to the condos. And so again, this is POA property. It's a fairly extensive project. We're in conversation with them, and we hope to start moving along this area. As I mentioned, we're also trying to work along the pump track, Vacation Park, and clean up as it gets down towards Vacation Drive. So fuel modification, as I mentioned, we don't currently have any zones in the city, but what you're trying to do is modify the area. We do have what's called by the state sections of Canyon Lake that are in the very high fire hazard severity zone. And the state has drawn a map of the entire state and said these areas are more prone to risk from fire, to damage from fire than some other areas. And people do have a difficult time getting insurance. Fire insurance is a very hot topic in the community. And so if a person sells a home in a very high fire hazard severity zone, there is a mandated inspection that has to be done by us, the fire department, when the home is in escrow, to go through a checklist and identify the roof, the vegetation around it, what kind of fuel modification has been done, what kind of roof is there, is it dual pane windows, is there hardscape around there, and we have to go through and write a report that becomes part of the escrow document. This is the area in red around our city that is part of the very high fire hazard severity zone. You can see the BLM section is well identified, but also along, where the storage area is by the golf course and down by the dam are some other areas that are in the very high fire hazard severity zone. The state is currently upgrading these maps. They should have them done by the end of the year. We're not sure what the maps are going to show, but there is belief that based on the fire history in California, the devastating fires that we have seen over the last 10 years, that the very high fire hazard severity zone could grow. And there could be more sections in Canyon Lake that are going to be red as a result of that. We won't know until we know. So that really concludes our presentation. Ruby and I are available for any questions. Again, it's a combination of the POA working out there proactively on an annual basis to mitigate the lots, for the fire department with code enforcement to go out there and survey the community, and then for the community, if they see hazards, to call them into code enforcement, to call them into the fire department. We will go out there and investigate. If we determine it's a fire hazard, then we'll follow up and try to get it mitigated. So I'm available for any questions if you have them.
I have a question. Do we have a routine of inspection, like just before the fire season, say July or June, where we go out and look at these locations?
This is the first year that code enforcement and the fire department work together to go out there proactively and do that. Yes, sir.
But this will be ongoing?
It will be ongoing, yes, sir.
Any other questions?
Awesome job. Appreciate the
All right.
effort.
Thank you.
This is receive and file, correct?
Correct.
It was.
No motion required.
Cool.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Update regarding the City Highway Safety Improvement Program. Presentation by Director Borja.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. I'm going to give a quick update on our Highway Safety Improvement Program, our project, I should say. And if you remember back in February of this year, council member at that time provided an update during the budget workshop. She gave somewhat detail about what was taking place, but not a whole lot about progress and that sort of thing. So that's why I'm going to touch base a little bit on some of that. So again, the overview is to kind of go over and discuss a little bit about the final designs of the barrier wall, the addition of the eastbound left turn lane, the street lighting, and the landscape, and then we'll go into our current budgets, which have slightly increased, and our timeline. Why is people leaving? This is the most exciting PowerPoint tonight. So, Railroad Canyon Road. This is our little portion, about 1.5 miles stretched. The areas of where the barrier wall is going to be taking place are going to be in the curvatures of Railroad Canyon Road. Area 1 I refer to as Country Club Drive. It's actually just before Country Club and after Country Club. So if you're traveling eastbound on Railroad Canyon Road, once you pass Skylink, you'll see the wall begin there. These are where the barrier walls were intended to go as part of the safety plan. I know a lot of people maybe thought that these walls would be completely all the way down our medians, the entire stretch, but really that's where the pinpoints are at, just because of where, if you remember, our local road safety plan kind of outlined some of the heavy areas of where maybe some serious potential incidents could occur and have occurred over the time. The other area that we're also addressing too is the eastbound left turn lane. If some of you remember some time ago as well, we were asked to work with Interwest to see if we can increase the left turn lane on Railroad Canyon Road for the reasons of too many vehicles at a certain period of time every day would be out in the major roadway. So this was sort of kind of like an opportunity to add this to the project. It's not necessarily an HSIP project. We're kind of doing it in conjunction with it. So it's the right time to do it. And I'll go into it just a little bit more as we go along. So the barrier wall. The barrier wall is a concrete wall about 3 feet in height, about 2 feet base diameter, with landscape on both sides. Initially, the wall was intended to be on the curb of the turn, but we thought that nobody would like to see a wall down Railroad Canyon Road as you're coming in. So we thought, let's move it in the center median, sort of mask it a little bit with some of the landscape, and maybe it wouldn't look too bad. But it's something that people are going to have to get used to. So the picture on your right kind of shows and kind of depicts what that wall would sort of look like. But again, you'll see landscape on both sides. The eastbound left turn lane. So again, as I mentioned before, we're going to be extending that approximately about 100 feet. We had a gentleman, Steve Lieberg from Wildan, actually look into this for us. He's a traffic engineer here in the community. And with his help and with Interwest's help, we were able to determine that approximately 100 feet of extending out would probably give us some of that safety cushion that we need for that left turn lane. So again, this is not part of the HSIP project. It's going to be happening with it, but funding would be different. It's not from the HSIP funding that we receive from the grant. Streetlight poles. As you remember, the local road safety plan called out for better improvements on our lightings down Railroad Canyon Road. We have determined as of right now, 27 proposed streetlights running obviously down the center median. Not in all areas. You notice that in some areas there might be some openings there. That's because there's already lighting there where our palm trees are at. So it wouldn't make sense to add lighting in there too as well. One thing I forgot to mention with regard to the eastbound left turn lane, it is going to take out a few of our palm trees. But we're talking about maybe relocating them into some certain other areas too as well. But we're going to see as things kind of go and whether or not that's something that we can actually do. But I did want to mention that because I'm sure people are going to ask what's going to happen with all those trees. So there are a couple of, I think maybe it calls for about 3 of them to come out. So again, these are our street light poles that are going to be going down the center median. The image to the right kind of depicts what that sort of looks like. They're going to be black poles to match everything else that we have here. I'm sure there's going to be a concern about lighting, maybe potentially to neighbors' homes and that sort of thing. But one thing that I have done, and we've done it with a few of our light poles right now in some of our intersections, we've added deflectors that kind of prevent from the lighting to go into the neighbors' homes. So we'll kind of see how that is and how things kind of progress, and if that's something that we need to do, we'll do that too as well. Landscaping, we're going to keep everything pretty much consistently with what we currently have right now. Everything seems to be working for the most part. There's going to be some improvements, basically in the areas that I identified, those 3, area 1, 2, and 3. Those are the areas where the landscape is going to be disturbed. It's nowhere else going to be disturbed. It did call out for potentially some DG going into that area, but we might be changing that because as part of SB 1383, we are required to purchase a large amount of mulch every year because it's a requirement from Cal Recycle. So we're thinking about maybe pulling out the DG and just utilizing our mulch for that, and it'll help suffice Cal Fire. Cal Recycle.
How much mulch are we required to buy?
So for this year, because it actually, for us, Canyon Lake has started this year, we are required to purchase about 190 tons of mulch. Now, we can purchase not just mulch, but we can also purchase compost. We can give it out to the community. There's a lot. I don't think Railroad Canyon Road.
How many tons?
190 tons.
Do we have enough room for 190 tons for this project?
We do not.
So,
It gets even worse.
yeah, let's hear this, please.
Because in the next coming years, starting in '25 and moving on, we're going to be at 100% capacity for mulch for us. It's going to be 882 tons.
So I'm assuming because the state is so brilliant in coming up with these programs, that they've given option A, B, and C for other, like fake grass or whatever that the city can purchase to meet the requirement? Or is it just purely a mulch buy?
No, they want this, they're allowing the cities to be a little bit creative. Like, for example, some cities I know are giving away like compost in bags, mulch in bags. We can do something like that, but that's like a regular occurrence program that we would have to do on a weekly basis. It makes sense if we have a public works department where we can handle that sort of large amount. But it can be done in many different ways. We do get credits from our waste hauler on some of this, because some of the things that they do for us also goes into that procurement amount of 882 tons. But
out of the 190, how much does that cost?
That's a good question.
Councilor, I think we've kind of proceeded into a 1383 unfunded mandate that we may have to go back and get you some additional information for.
Yeah. Long story short, we do have some grant money that's going to cover us this year.
But we're going to have a
Next
mulch
year.
problem.
The state is going to have a mulch problem.
Yeah. The problem with what happened with Cal Recycle, they didn't really take it upon to really investigate and determine what how every city is.
Clearly.
City of our scale, no public works department, no street department. They expect you somehow to house that amount of mulch or compost. Now, they don't care what we do with it, meaning we can give it all to our landscaper. He can distribute it however he wants. Doesn't necessarily have to be here.
It's not a gift of public funds?
It almost seems like it, but that's how it kind of works. But now we're using grant money for this year and for next year, maybe in '26. But moving forward, it's going to be a requirement that all cities have to be somehow funding. Hopefully, there are going to be additional grants out there that are going to be able to help with that, but we'll have to wait and see.
When 1383 also gets into our paper purchases and the requirement for recycled paper, it excludes school districts, but it is wide-ranging, and it is the very definition of an unfunded mandate.
And our waste hauler has been a big help. They try to figure out solutions for us on what we can do. So we're gonna hear everything out and see what comes of it. But obviously, in my mind, I'm thinking I'm gonna mulch Railroad Canyon Road every year. Is that gonna cover the 882? Nowhere near. I was trying to be a little bit creative and started thinking outside of the box, maybe working something with the POA. You know, they have a lot of common areas that they can use
Yeah.
the mulch. They have a lot of parks. I'd be willing to
I mean, and I'm sorry to my colleagues for going down this path of mulch, but as an avid mulch man myself, it's an issue because it takes up so much space. And if you look at our CCNRs here, that's what people do. It's the cheapest way to get ground cover. It's required per parcel. So, you know, I think, yes, this is a stupid problem that the state has given to us, but you know, one of the most popular days that the city helps puts on with our trash hauler is our dump day.
Mm-hmm.
It's very successful. It's very popular. I look at a day like that where, hey, dump your trash and grab some mulch.
We did that in April. We
Right.
actually did that. We tested to see how much this community would pick up.
It's got to be nuts, right?
Well, you know.
Was it advertised right, though?
I think so. I think it was.
It was.
But we did a total of maybe 3 pallets. Maybe Jessica may know because she was working that day, but I think it might have been like 3 pallets. They went within an hour. So now I know that I can, for next year, I can quadruple the amount, and I think this community would pick up quite a few.
Because, this is, again, I'm just having conversations amongst landlords and property owners here in the community. We all tell each other when Home Depot and Lowe's does the special 3 bags for $10, and it's sold out.
We do it for free.
That's my point.
We do it for free.
So I'm saying if it was properly advertised, at least, in a couple of the networks that I run with, I guarantee you those 3 pallets, it'd be a whole different ballgame. It would be, so.
Well, and Councilmember, this is premature, but Mike and I have talked about the possibility of working with the POA to even find a spot. The POA may say, sure, you can dump it here, and then we can just leave it there for residents to come and get for free.
Until it's gone.
Correct.
Or they can use it too as well, because
Yeah.
they got a golf course.
Yeah.
They got plenty of parks, so.
So let's, all right, cool. Sorry, guys.
Budgets. So if you remember, our grant that we were awarded was a little over 1.2 million. With all the additional costs of what else we need to do that goes into this, it's had to slightly increase a little bit more. But fortunately, with the gas tax and Measure A money and RMA money, we're able to utilize some of that money that's there already to help cover those additional costs. So this project, if you see there, the total estimate is 1.793 million. That's kind of where we're at. I don't foresee that kind of going up. It does has a contingency cost of a little over $208,000. Excuse me. But keep in mind too, this grant was very specific on what it can be used for, what the money could be used for. We couldn't use it for design. There's a huge design aspect in this whole thing. The landscape irrigation required additional designing too as well. There's just a lot of work that kind of goes into this. So overall, this project, we're looking at just a little under 1.8 million. But again, we do have the money. We have plenty of money in gas tax and Measure A that we can use specifically for this, because that's what that money can be used for.
But we're going to sell mulch to offset this, right?
No.
You're not selling mulch these days?
Yeah. We can't sell
So,
mulch.
I mean, Mike,
Yes.
it's a big difference, right? I mean, we were looking at putting together a project of the 1.2 to 1.4 million. So is it just cost, I mean, we've expanded the project too since we first spoke.
Yeah. And if you notice, the lengthening of the eastbound left turn lane is about 150,000 to do. But again, that is not HSIP money, so you can kind of pull that out maybe, and so you'd be at maybe 1.64. If you look at the cost, the medium lighting is expensive. The barrier wall obviously is very expensive. And also the estimate for the landscape and new irrigation that's being disturbed in those areas, so.
And Mike, you and I discussed delays that caused this. When we go back into closed session, that's one of the things we're going to discuss that kind of created this.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and as you know, everything has gone up.
My question is, how much of this increase is added scope?
Added scope?
Yes.
Meaning like additional is.
In other words, we had a plan to do one thing in the beginning, but now we've added this and added that.
I think for the most part, what you're seeing there is what was sort of expected, because when we got the 1.2, we really didn't know what it was going to cost us to do everything. So I really think what you're seeing here is not out of the ordinary, nothing additional that was really added. I mean, the eastbound left turn lane is in there, but technically it's not HSIP money, but neither is the design in what you see in blue, because HSIP does not cover that cost. So what you see in that top portion, you see that one total of 1.5 million, just over 1.5 million, that's really what HSIP is going to be covering. So, and you see the delta there, that's 348,000, that's additional on top of it. So maybe that answers your question. About $350,000 is probably an addition to the original scope. But again, line item by line item, there's nothing there that's out of the ordinary. I think that's kind of what was expected.
Thank you.
Timeline. As City Manager Aaron Brown had mentioned too, there's been some slight delays in our timeline. And really it has to do with, NOS has been instrumental with this whole project from the very beginning, from assisting with the writing of the grant to helping with the design and engineering for this entire project and overseeing this whole entire project. They've been sort of kind of pulled left and right this past year on many different things. I mean, the eastbound left turn lane was one of them, for example. But yeah, so I know initially we had talked about this project maybe beginning sometime in 2024. I mean, we are doing things in 2024, but the most important, what everybody is more concerned about is when construction is estimated to begin. And if you look at the timeline, we're looking at around maybe potentially a January, February timeframe is where we're looking at. So construction for this, we probably won't see it wrapped up probably until maybe June of next year. So that's kind of the extent of it. I know some of this could change though. Like for example, the bid development and review, I think that's important to point out, because with everything that we've done so far, that NOS has done so far, it still has to be reviewed and approved by the Department of Transportation. So there's still that process, and we're hoping that in 2 months, by the end of October, we should hear back from them and this project should be smooth sailing. But there's always that possibility. They can come back and say, you need to change this, you need to change that. So this is kind of what we currently have right now for our time. But that's very important because we don't know how long that could take from them. We don't anticipate that, just because it's pretty straightforward what we're doing here. There's nothing out of the ordinary that I think would change anything, because they've been involved from the very beginning on this. If you remember the barrier wall, there was discussions about having some sort of cable wall, and they threw that out right away immediately, and they said it's got to be a barrier wall, a concrete wall. So we'll see what happens. I don't think it can go that. I really think it's probably going to be maybe by the end of this month. But maybe don't take my word for it. But anyways, going out to bid, I know 3 months we have in there, but that could also be less too as well. You got to remember too, right? You know, you award the bid, or you post the bid, then you still have to go through the whole process of awarding it by council too as well. So that could take a couple months too. So this timeline could change. This timeline could change. So
Is it possible that the price will reduce?
the way things have been looking, everything's been going up.
So that gap, 1.2 to 1.7 and some change, you're thinking gas tax 100%?
I think so.
Is there additional grant funding out there?
Well, one thing that I'll tell you, and Interwest kind of mentioned this to me, they're going to see, you remember that delta, that 350,000? They're going to see if they can go back and see if they can award that to us as well.
Oh, good.
So they're going to attempt and see what they can do, maybe even more. We'll just kind of have to wait and see. But really, it would probably only be that delta amount, because that is only what the grant can cover. It can't cover the design aspect of it or the eastbound.
Does the grant cover bridges
Or tunnels.
or tunnels?
No.
Okay.
But I'm sure there's another grant that can cover a bridge or a tunnel. But this one specifically, once you submit a project to the Department of Transportation, they don't like you to go back and change it. They want you to stick with it and see it through. So.
Yeah, obviously haven't been to Canyon Lake.
Yeah. Any questions? I think
Mike,
that's
you did
pretty
great.
much my
Thanks for putting up with us,
presentation.
or me.
Mike, you're amazing.
Okay, good job, Mike.
Thank you.
No more questions for staff? We're all good on questions. Do we have any public comment cards?
We do not.
Motion and a second to receive and file report.
Mayor, we don't need a motion
Don't
on
need
this.
it? Okay.
We're good with the
We're
receive
good.
and file. Thank you. Thank you.
We're humming through these here, so. Moving on to 9, introduction, first reading of ordinance 249 and urgency ordinance number 250, adopting a golf cart transportation plan. City Manager Brown?
Yes, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem and Council, I would like to withdraw this item from this meeting. Let us go back and work on this a little more. Where it's at right now basically gets us essentially where we are. And so we need to work additionally with our partners to see where else we can go. With that, I did have a conversation with Councilmember Smith. He may be able to give an update on another route that we're looking at in parallel.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Mr. City Attorney, do you want to continue us on this?
So.
Would you prefer that?
I think at this time, we'd appreciate a motion to continue to a date uncertain.
Yeah.
To give the city manager and I an opportunity to look at our options here.
So what the city manager is talking about is I had the conversation with our senator, and he'd be willing to especially sit down with us and look at some language that we can help draft on the state side. So I think a continuous would be in best for this because there's more information that is still needed. So if I have a second, I'll make the motion that we continue this, and we'll leave it to our clerk, obviously, to work on a date that makes sense on when we're ready.
Can I make one comment on that? Am I allowed to make a comment on that? I'm okay with continuing this, but can we try to make sure that we get it? I know this is something that's very important to all of us in the community and want to make sure that we're keeping our foot on the gas on this.
We will keep our foot on the gas or electric.
The electric.
Either one.
Okay, we don't need to be concerned about comment cards then? I don't see any.
We do not have any comments, Mayor.
Yeah, we have a first and a second, I believe.
So we have a motion to continue this item to a date uncertain.
Correct.
We have a first by Councilmember Smith and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Terry.
Yep.
Do a roll call vote. Councilmember Castillo.
Aye.
Councilmember Dane.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Terry.
Aye.
Mayor Welty.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, we're moving to city manager comments.
One quick one, Mayor. Councilmember Castillo had talked earlier about the amazing pumpkin bash that we have coming up. For those Monopoly players out there, we got the once-in-a-career item where Southern California Edison sent us that bank error in your favor card and did let us know that through their audit, they had underpaid for the utility tax and let us know a surprise would be coming in just south of $30,000. That was unplanned. It was not what we expected. So being able to take on the pumpkin bash, being able to help out those in the town center, get some business over here and coming, it is extremely timely that I hate to say money fell from the sky, but it was transmitted over some power lines, I believe. Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to announce that this next city meeting will be held on October 9th, 2024, and we are going to move back to closed session.